Well, think about any payment you made today, whether you paid for a taxi or an auto, you bought apples, or maybe you paid your electricity bill, or maybe you bought something more expensive. It's very likely these payments were all made by scanning a barcode and using UPI because it's become such a deeply woven part of our lives. We don't even think about it anymore. But guess who is thinking about it? The government of India. Lok Sabha passed a bill today that allows the government to introduce charges to UPI payments some point in the future. Does this mean you'll have to start paying for your UPI payments? How much will you pay? At what threshold will you pay? And why is the government thinking of this? That's what we're going to break down in this video going forward. Okay. Before we start, remember, like, share, subscribe, and sign up for our membership. You will get a bulletin every day, which is 10 minutes of very calm delivery of the news. So you can find out what's going on around the world without it traumatizing you. Okay, let's get started. Lok Sabha today passed an amendment to the Payment Settlement Systems Act of 2007. What this does is it gives the central government legal authority to prescribe charges for UPI by changing the rules in the future. So it has not imposed a fee right now. It has not announced a fee in the future. It is not even decided how much or who will pay. It has just said that the government has the ability to make this change in the future because up until now, the government had decided that UPI will have no charges at all. Now, everybody is talking about the possibility of a merchant discount rate being brought on UPI. So, let me first explain to you what that merchant discount rate is. So, you know that when you use your credit card at a shop to buy something expensive, the merchant tends to turn around. The shopkeeper will say, "अगर credit card use कर रहे हो तो 1%, 2% charge तो लगेगा, madam." And then you decide whether or not you want to use that credit card. That's the merchant discount rate. And this is what it is. So, when you make a payment, there is a whole network that actually processes that payment. It's your bank that is processing the credit card, it's the merchant's bank that's processing that payment. And there's a whole infrastructure in the middle: fraud detection, settlement systems, cybersecurity infrastructure, customer support. All of this needs to be paid for. Who pays for it? Well, the merchant pays for it. And it's normally about 1% or 2%. Um, so, for example, if you bought a fridge, say for 50,000 rupees using your credit card, and there was a 1% charge on it, the merchant would only receive 49,000 rupees and 49,500 rupees, and that remaining 500 would go to pay for all of these transactions. Of course, the merchant would never pay for it. They would up the price and collect it from the customer. Up until now, that was the charge for credit cards was normally 1.5%, 2%. Debit cards is much lower, 0.4 to 0.9%. UPI was an exception because there was no charge till now. However, that might change. And there's been some reporting on Reuters about the fact that there might be a 2,000 rupee threshold to that transaction, which means Reuters has reported that there have been government to bank and RBI discussions about the fact that everything above 2,000 rupees as a UPI transaction could attract a fee. Now, global brokerage firm Jeffries has done an analysis of this 2,000 rupees threshold, and it said that 4% of the total transactions of the UPI universe are above 2,000 rupees. 96% falls below 2,000 rupees. So, why are they doing it? Because that 4% accounts for 67% of all of the money that is moving in the UPI universe, which means that if there were 100 payments made today, 96 of those payments were below 2,000 rupees. So, they were your groceries, your auto rickshaw, your pharmacy bill. 4 transactions were above, but two-thirds of the money that's moving in the system went in those 4 transactions, which is why for the government, this actually looks really interesting because by exempting everything under 2,000 rupees, they will actually avoid taxing the small merchants, the small transactions, your Apple guy, your grocery guy. They leave everything out. But by taxing everything above 2,000 rupees, according to Jeffries, they will actually be able to bring in 5,000 to 10,000 crore rupees every year to feed that banking payment service providers and help fund infrastructure growth. In other words, the proposal is not trying to charge all UPI transactions if Reuters reporting actually turns out to be true, in the sense that if those discussions turn out to be the final rules, it will mean that if you're doing a high value above 2,000 rupees transaction in UPI, you may be paying a higher fee. Again, I will remind you, nothing has actually come out, been confirmed by the government so far. Now, to understand why the government is doing this, we have to go back to 2016 when UPI was introduced in the country. In 2016, The UPI was launched by the National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. This is the company, this is the not for profit organization started by the RBI and the Indian Banking Association to basically set up this infrastructure. So the idea back then was that instead of each bank building their own infrastructure, they will pull together, they will create this not for profit, and one mother infrastructure will be built and everybody will use it. So NPCI also runs RuPay, it runs IMPS, it runs Bharat Pay, FASTag, Aadhaar enabled payment systems. All of this, everything communicates instantly through this one infrastructure. And back in 2016, that was groundbreaking. Remember, 7 months after this was brought into place, the 8th of November 2016, the Prime Minister announced demonetization. Cash disappeared, and we all had to find our feet in digital payments immediately. And banks promoted mobile banking. Beam was launched. QR codes actually started quite rapidly. Millions of merchants who had never accepted digital payments suddenly started doing so. I remember a grocery store that is extremely popular in Bandra that would not take cards. You had to pay by cash. You had to like draw cash and then go to the shop because they just simply would not take cards. All of that had to change overnight. Everybody started using UPI. We stopped carrying cash, we stopped drawing cash. We stopped even using our debit cards, right? We only just use UPI. You carry your phone and you use it for everything. Now, India at that point pushed digital payments hard. It told us all that this was the future. You have to get on board. And sometimes I get worried about how dependent we are on digital, payments. Because remember, in places like Jantar Mantar, if they shut down the internet, you can't pay for it. You can't buy anything. You can't transact effectively. It's like being locked out of your own bank account, which is not good. We're extremely dependent on it, and now we hear the possibility that we might be charged for it. In 2019, remember, this is 2016 when demonetization happened. In 2019, the finance ministry actually amended a law to say no merchant discount or no charges at all on UPI or RuPay. And at that point, Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, said digital payments will be encouraged and should not be penalized. And the message was clear. India wanted merchants to stop asking for cash, stop asking for cards, and actually use UPI instead. And they said, we will, and I'm quoting here, the finance minister said, we will sacrifice fee income today for widespread adoption, which is more important. And then the numbers show exactly what happened. By 2017, within the year, UPI processed fewer than 20 million transactions a month. By 2020, it was 1 billion. By 2022, it was 7 billion per month. According to NPCI, India has processed more than 20 billion UPI transactions every month worth 30 lakh crore rupees. And to put that into perspective, every day, India transfers 1 lakh crore rupees on UPI alone. That's 650 million transactions that happen every day. It's completely mind boggling numbers. Nowhere else in the world is anybody moving money like this. But guess who hates it? The banks. The banks have been complaining for years. For almost 6 years, banks have argued that the fact that they cannot charge a fee has a structural problem because banks earn nothing from actually processing these payments. Unlike credit cards or unlike cash, here these transactions are exploding and they cost dramatically higher. There is no revenue. Private banks, public sector banks, payment service providers repeatedly have asked the government to change that law and allow for payments. Industry bodies, including the Payments Council of India, has argued that the charges must be brought in order to strengthen digital infrastructure. Basically, they're saying that we will be motivated to do more, to do better, to service better if we are able to charge and if this is a revenue producing arm of our business. What has the RBI said? The RBI has been very careful not to take a public position. It has consistently emphasized two principles. It has said, one, digital payments must remain affordable. Two, payment system must remain sustainable. What does that mean? We don't really know. RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra has said no financial decision has been or final decision has been taken with regard to charges on UPI right now. So why is this happening now? For one, the government incentive schemes that compensated banks up till now have become increasingly expensive for the government, and they don't want to have to basically take on that load and compensate for the losses that the banks are going through. Second, UPI is no longer a niche technology. It is now India's dominant retail technology, widely adopted. So the government could argue that our purpose has been served. And third, banks argue that almost for a decade, encouraging adoption, and now the ecosystem has basically matured. So why are we still doing this? There is another side of the argument also. The fact that says that if you do this, it will, first of all, bigger merchants will be able to get better deals for themselves. Smaller merchants will start getting crushed. It creates uncertainty for businesses. It could increase the cost of doing business. It could undermine digital India. This is the big thing. So, this whole idea of we did demonetization, we crushed the economy, we throttled it for a couple of years, we've barely started to crawl back. Our economy is having all kinds of issues right now. At this point, if you encourage cash again, what was all of this for? And what will happen, we know without a doubt, high level transactions will come off UPI. People will stop doing it. They will look for other alternatives, that other alternatives being bags of cash. Now, is this really something we want to go back to as a country? So, on one hand, and this is, like I said, right, there are flip sides to every argument. So, on one hand, there's this massive amount of money being moved on UPI. It's all transparent. It's all measurable. The government has access to it. The government has access to banking data and where the money is going, but it's not paying for itself. And on the other hand, you've got the idea of charging for this. And if you charge for this, what's going to happen is cash is going to come back into the system. You are going to, penalize smaller merchants. Bigger merchants will be able to get themselves a better deal. People making high level transactions will actually go off UPI and make them with cash. So, which of the two things do you think the government should be doing right now? And after forcing us to, adopt UPI in the way that we have, is it really fair now to bring in a charge? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you think.